than other folks. As you know, I'm Jim McEntire. I'm a Republican, and I'm running for re-election for County Commissioner. And before I forget to say it, let me ask you for your vote. And I'm going to ask all the other voters in Clallam County to return me to office as well. This is a real pleasure. This is the first event of official, formal event of my campaign. I can't think of a better bunch of people to start that cycle again off with than the Republican women. So thank you for your support in the past. I look forward to having your support again this time. And I also have to give a bit of a shout out to Brandon Janice, my friend, who's running for the Sequim City Council. He's working. He's a young man, so he's got to work for a living. I'm a politician. It's questionable whether I work for a living. You can be the judge of that. Anyway, Brandon has some literature on the back table, as do I. I would certainly appreciate your wearing a button. I would appreciate your financial support more than anything else. I'd much more rather have your vote, as I said before. You all know me. I don't need to go into a lot of my personal background. I have made mighty efforts to carry through on the promises that I made when I was first running for this office 4 years ago. And those were to put individual rights first. My job description is in the preamble to the Washington State Constitution, which I'm obligated by oath to follow and honor. And that is to protect your individual rights. So I've turned that into an operational demand on myself to put you and the economy first, and I have done that. A lot of details to that. I won't go into them. I'll be happy to address some of those details in your questions. But I will just note that for the very first time, I'm told, in our state's history, the county government has lowered taxes. And, you know, more than a week, your sales taxes, if you buy something that is outside a city limit, in Clallam County, it'll cost you 0.2% less in sales tax. So we're going to see how we can keep that going as we talk in the coming months about our fiscal 16 budget. That's going to be one of the things that we'll spend some time talking about. And so I should stop and answer your questions or take your comments.
Have a problem in it. How does that affect the county, the low flows in the rivers? Is there, aside from fire, is there going to be a problem for us?
It really, county government really has next to nothing to do with regulating water. So the best information that I have, that I've been told, is that groundwater is generally not going to be a problem unless you got a really, really shallow well, or unless you have a well that's close to the river and the river essentially dries up. But streams, you know, the smaller streams likely may dry up, which is kind of their historic condition. You know, you look at Matriotic Creek or Bell Creek in the summertime before there was irrigation here 117 or 18 or whatever it is years ago. Those were intermittent streams in the summer. They just dried up. And so that's, JW knows way more than I do about water, so maybe he can answer that question.
I was going to ask a separate question on that. I'm retired from the public water, drinking water business act. I was curious to know what effect the transfer of that $1 million will have on the progress of the Carlsberg sewer program.
I think, JW, you're referring to the capital buy-in from the Carlsberg wastewater treatment system to the city of Sequim's water reuse facility. I think that's what you're referring to. I just want to make sure. That's essentially, I liken it to a latecomer's fee. If you're building a house in Sequim, you have to, as a part of the fees that you pay to the city, part of that is what's known as a latecomer's fee to buy into the capital cost of the water treatment system, the sewer system that Squim already has built. So that's essentially what that is. It's the county buying in some sense, to the capital plant that the city of Squim already has. And that's a one-time cost. That's one and done. And then there's an annual cost that's calculated by formula in the agreement that the county and the city have. But I hope that answers your question. If I didn't quite get it right, tell me how I didn't get it right.
It won't delay the installation of.
Oh, no, not at all. That money's already been paid. We should be able to go out to bid on the construction of the Carlsberg system sometime, I'm hoping this fall, September. Don't hold me to that. I've made too many promises about timelines that have not come true.
Just a quick comment. I was on the conservation district when we tightlined the irrigation ditches, particularly running along Taylor Cutoff. And that operation dried up over 120 wells.
I'm sure it did.
And I talked to Louis, he resank over 120 different.
Punch them a lot deeper.
So that idea, which they still foster, they're trying to pump water into the underground aquifer to retain it, which to me is madness when you consider the fact that the entire Olympic Peninsula runs downhill to the north. So I don't know how you would, there's just no science in my mind that would justify that sort of stuff, but there's still, I remember when Ann Soul, I was on the conservation district, and Ann Soul wanted to experiment with that in Carlsberg. It doesn't work. So we continue to do things that don't work and hope that it works.
That is our Department of Ecology. Nothing more needs to be said.
I don't know if we have any hope or not with that cooperation coordination amendment that they're trying to get into the charter. And I don't know if Dan went to the first meeting with the PUD about the water restrictions, and we are seriously affected with that right now. We are moving backwards. We are taking water outside, from inside outside, so that we can water our plants, try to keep our yard water. But the EPA, basically, they're responsible, not the EPA, the DOE is responsible for those restrictions. And it's for the fish, so we have water for the fish. Is there any way with that coordination, cooperation clause, would that have any effect at all on the DOE's decision for this water restriction? I can see where people don't conserve. Some people don't know how, but we do. We always have. And so when I see these things that make it much harder for some people who do know how to conserve, and yet it's for the fish. And the water could drop quite a bit. From my understanding, fish know when to come upstream. They wait till the water comes down the stream and they go up. In the meantime, they have other water out there.
They know how to do it. So.
Yeah. And Susan struck on a sore note on my behalf with fish. A lot of these fish restrictions are based on an 1850 law treaty with the Indians. We ought to revisit that treaty. They no longer depend on salmon run for their food. Not beyond your pay grade. I know.
Way above my pay grade.
Yeah.
But
I know, but
there's a lot of old stuff that needs to be looked at, brought to current day.
Because they're totally ridiculous. Indians don't need those fish.
You have been accused by an alleged member of the media of not being conservative, of being a fraud, and calling yourself a Republican, and being a spendthrift, and you're out there frittering away county money, and I would like to give you an opportunity to respond to that.
Let me respond in two ways. First of all, I'll address the fiscal conservative issue, because I am one. being a fiscal conservative, to me, is not simply about not spending money. Being a fiscal conservative is about spending the money you have wisely. And so that's what I think I have a good record of. I don't think it, I believe it, because I think it's true. To give you a little insight on this individual that you refer to, and I'm sure that we're talking about the same person.
Well, I don't know.
He is Dale Wilson.
Oh, thank you.
He,
No credibility.
and this is public information. Anybody can find this on the Public Disclosure Commission website. Dale Wilson was one of the individuals that helped fund one of my opponents, who's running as a Democrat, his filing fee. It's out there for all to see. I'll turn that into a PDF file and email it to you and Dick and Sue, and you guys can get that out to people. So in my book, he's a political partisan and has revealed himself as such by providing $200 to one of my opponents who's running as a Democrat. So that's that. Enough said.
I'd like to correct Martha on one point. This is not a journalist or a journalistic publication.
I called him an alleged.
Alleged, okay. I think the correct phraseology is he's a pamphleteer posing as a journalist. And the name of his pamphlet should be the Marijuana Daily Shopper.
To follow up on a couple things you talked about.
And I'm wiping my eyes. It's not because I'm overcome with emotion. It's just simply there's a lot of pollen.
You've got allergies, and we've been filling our barn full of hay, so I'm well acquainted with your issues there. The Carlsberg sewer, I am well outside that district, but that is an issue that has been around since the early 90s, since the State Growth Management Act. And you either have, the window of opportunity for arguing that Carlsberg does not need a sewer is closed. It may or may not, when you think rationally, you may be able to make the argument that Carlsberg doesn't need a sewer, but when you are looking at it from the view of the Department of Ecology, which, as we've already noted, is not a rational view, that you really have no choice there. One of your opponents, his whole big reason for running seems to be he wants to stop that from happening. I know the 4 years I was in, I worked very hard to try to get it. Ecology stonewalled at every turn. Mr. Theringer ran against me saying she couldn't get it in 4 years. He left me, I'll get it. He was in more than 4 years. He still didn't get it. Now it does appear that is going to happen.
Let me start by saying this is a property rights issue, and you might wonder why and how is it a property rights issue? It's an issue in this way. If there were no Growth Management Act, we wouldn't have this problem. Right? But since we do, and since I'm obliged by oath to follow the law says if you have an urban growth area, and in a rural county, an urban growth area like Carlsberg or Squim or Port Angeles is a really blunt instrument. It's really not the best tool to use, but it's the only tool we have to use in the case of a community like Carlsberg. So given that, the law says if you're going to have one of those, it's got to have municipal services, police, parks, fire, wastewater, so on and so on. And so we've seen the effect on property rights of the county's former inability to get that done. There was a moratorium on anybody having a building permit except for internal remodeling and so forth for existing buildings in Carlsberg. So if you own bare ground in Carlsberg, you couldn't build on it for 20 years. That's not a good situation for the property owner or for county government. And so the way to solve that problem, as Martha indicated, is to put some infrastructure in place, which is what we, and I'm proud of this, finally have been able to do after many, many years of trying. And so the 250 or 300 or so people that have bought property or a building or a business or whatever in Carlsberg since the urban growth area was put into effect in the 90s, if the urban growth area were to go away, their value would evaporate. They would have no value because the zoning then would have to go to R5, 5 acre, a single house on 5 acres. That would be the essential zoning for Carlsberg, were there to be no UGA. So everybody's investment, all of those that have bought property and so forth, since the inception of the UGA would have their value taken from them. That is something I just cannot do. I cannot countenance that. So in that fashion, it's a property rights issue. And so therefore, property rights are sacred to me as they are to you too, I'm sure. And that's the reason that I have been so interested in trying to get this thing done. And it looks like we are successful.
Right on.
Jim, I just, while you're talking about old issues,
I see Ann standing up, so I'm about to get the book.
No, we'll give you a few more.
we need a shooting park.
Yes, sir.
We've got a spot for it. In a little while, we're gonna go up and.
I need one more vote.
You need one more vote?
I do. And I think, and my theory is that vote will materialize when we try to put the money in the budget again this time. However, I'm told, and this is very, very preliminary, there may be the possibility of the city of Port Angeles, and I have talked to no one about this, so you're hearing this for the first time, for the city and the county to join together to create a shooting sports park on the west side of the airport, not on port property, but on private property. But there's a pretty big tract of land there, and I'm told that the owner might be interested in a long-term lease if the city and the county were to make improvements and create a range there. So, you know, I am frustrated beyond words at my inability to this point to get that done. One more vote will get it over the hump, and we'll do it. So one way or the other, by hook or by crook, I'm going to do it. I just need one more vote.
Wait till one guy's out of town and then
Yeah.
take the vote. That's what Obama does.
I want to do a follow-up on the question that Susan Schauffer was just starting to ask regarding coordination
Yes.
versus cooperation.
And I didn't answer that. So
Currently, the
good.
Home Rule Charter calls for cooperation. Our committee, I serve on the Home Rule Charter Commission, put forth the idea of, because of your testimony primarily and some others, put forth the idea of changing that to coordination. Would you explain how that would work and if it would work for you as a county commissioner?
It would, and don't take anything that I'll say in answer to your question, Stuart, as me trying to get in front of the Charter Review Commission, because I certainly am not. You have your process, and I honor and respect that. But simply put, what coordination means is if you have a set of local ordinances, which county governments, city governments are empowered under the Constitution to create, then state and national governments have to honor those local laws and coordinate with you, the local government, on issues that are under state or federal jurisdiction. They can't just come in and roll over you, as they so often seem to want to do. They must discuss that with you and make sure that whatever the federal or the state action is compatible with the local policy expressed in ordinance or law or city code. So that really is what coordination is. So what we, the commissioners, can do is think about what sorts of things we want to enact and what sorts of things that we want to coordinate with Mary Ellen Winborn, our elected community development. She is obliged under the county charter to advise the county commission on those kinds of policies, environmental, natural resource, building, land use, so on and so forth. So, you know, we the commission can do some of that, but it would sure be great to have a mandate to do that. I think that would be awfully helpful for us. And so I would, as one citizen, certainly support and vote in favor of a charter amendment provision that changes that word and then says you need policies in the following 6, 8, 10 areas, whatever it is, so that you can have something with which to coordinate or demand coordination from the state and federal government.
One quick question. So back to my question, if that were in place, would there be any way that would have an impact on the DOE's decision to?
Likely not, because state law gives dang near 99% of legal authority to the Department of Ecology to regulate water. There's almost nothing that county and city governments do to regulate the water. Now, cities, of course, run utilities. The PUD runs a utility, that sort of thing. The county government does not here in Clallam County. So it's a separate question altogether from a utility kind of thing.
Jim,
Yes.
Staying on coordination cooperation, if the charter does not put this forward to the voters, can the commissioners do anything to change it?
Right. And I wanted to try to avoid saying something that sounds like a thing where I'm trying to get in front of the Charter Review Commission, because I certainly am not. But the existing charter right now gives the county commissioners and the people, by petition, the opportunity to put items on the general election ballot that'll amend or create new provisions in the county charter. So that is certainly something that I would be interested in looking into should the Charter Review Commission decide not to. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I in no way am trying to influence the discussion and decisions of the Charter Review Commission. That's their prerogative.
So if the DOE is a state issue and they have to do with also, the county would have, if the county has nothing to do with it, then therefore the county would have nothing to do with enforcement on that as well?
That's correct. That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
I am not going to be in the water enforcement business.
Oh. Okay, last question.
So I always look at the Department of Ecology as a bully. And short of meeting them at the county line with torches and pitchforks, which has its appeal, what can we do to push back against this? Is there anything aside from electing a Republican governor?
Number one thing we can do is elect a Republican governor.
That you can't.
Yes.
We are, as I've said several times, you know, anybody that's elected, and particularly if you're elected to county government, you're bound by oath to follow the Constitution, national, state law, for me, county charter, and county ordinances. I am obliged to do that. I can't break the law, even as much as my frustration would impel me to do on certain occasions. But the people can do lots of stuff. Thank you very much.